Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. It's Jane Atkinson here with your holiday edition. You know, the release date for this podcast is December 27th. And while this is playing, I'm going to be smack dab in the middle of a 12-day stretch with my family. And holidays and vacations are going to be a part of our planning today because you know what? That's why we're entrepreneurs. We want to be able to take advantage of the situation that we've put ourselves in. So we're going to be mapping out your goals for 2019. I have a acceleration roadmap that you can download and use if you go to speakerlauncher.com/roadmap. We're going to have that ready for you when this episode airs. And we're going to really be diving deep into what it is that you want for 2019. So it's called the 90-day roadmap, but it really goes beyond that. So use this form in whatever kind of format you like. We're going to put it into 2 pages. Right now, it's a big 11 by 17 form that we give out at our live events, but we're going to break it into 2 pages so that you can print it really easily and have nice big spaces. It's a beautiful full color form that I think you're really going to love. Now, I'm going to walk you through the roadmap, and you might want to give this podcast, say you're driving in your car listening, you might want to go through it once and then circle back with the form, or perhaps you pause, go get the form, and come back. It's really up to you how you want to do it. Now, the first section on our form is called Mega Goals. What are your goals for the next 3 years? Now, I put 3 years as the time frame on this, but I want you to know that some people, I recognize that some people really can't think in terms of 3 years out, and I want to really acknowledge that you have to do it in a way that really works for you. So let's say it's a mega goal for 1 year. That's totally cool. 3 years, 5 years, whatever type of time frame really works for you. But what I'd like you to be writing down are those kind of big, audacious goals, things that, you know, you don't have to know how they are going to happen. Just write them down. So for instance, on my mega goal list, I've got a house in Florida. Well, guess what? I'm not pursuing that goal today. I'm putting it on my list because my brain doesn't know the difference between reality and possibility. And we really want to be going for the goals that my coach, Dan Sullivan, says, I want what I want because I want it. Well, guess what? That's going on my list because that's something that I want. And I want you to really be writing down the things that are important to you, and don't put any limits on yourself. Don't worry about how they're going to happen. Put an income goal down and go big. Don't be afraid to go big on your goal. I have another goal there, the 5th book, to write it. It's not even on my radar to be writing that, but I'd really actually, what it says is 5th book bestseller. And I know what all it takes place in order to make that happen. And I'm not ready to do it yet, but I'm still going to write it down. So we have some special guests on the line with us today. Our Wealthy Speakers Sprint community is here. We've got Ron and Jason and Jen and John and Rob and Talisa all on the line with us. Some are on airplanes, some are in like trains, planes, and automobiles, these people, because many of them are traveling today to speak. And so I just would like to check in with you all and find out what one of your goals might be. And I'll have you just kind of give me a signal. I can see you all. And give me a signal if you would like to share with me what one of your goals might be. Anybody would like to share what one of their goals would be? And I'll go ahead and unmute you when that happens. Jen, there you go. Go ahead, Jen. Hang on a second. It's not working, my unmute. There we go.
Right, finally, my signature book that is all about my brand and my promise statement, and to get that baby out there. It's been quite a while, but I feel like it's finally come together, and it's the right.
I love it. Write that book, and that's going to be all around resilience, which is the Iron Gen brand. Ron, did you want to share something? Hang on, I'll unmute you. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, in terms of the 3-year horizon, I have this goal that says I want to be selecting the gigs that I accept. So I've set a certain number of gigs that I'd like to do at a certain fee. And so my aim is to have enough demand coming in that I'm actually selecting those gigs that are best suited for my message and audience.
I love it. I love it. Anybody else have one that they'd like to share? Jason, have you got something? I'm just going to look and see if I've got anything in the chat. Go ahead, Jason.
So I have that I will earn $500,000 in speaker fees and products by 12/31/21.
All right. I love it. That is fantastic. Way to go, Jason. So we're going to move over to the next box on our form here, and that is going to be all about what your lane is. Now, most of you in this group, the Wealthy Speaker Sprint group, most of you who have gone through kind of the ready and aim stage. And in the ready stage, we get crystal clear on what we're selling. And part of that is really identifying what our lane is. And when we talk lane, I got to give props to Joe Calloway, who really gave me the term pick a lane. When we talk about it, we're really talking about our topic. So think about the question, what do you want to be known for 5 years from now? And for some people who haven't quite got there on their lane, maybe 2019 is the year that you pick a lane. And I hope you'll tap into us over here at Wealthy Speaker Headquarters if we can help you narrow that lane. Some of the things that we do here are great for that. Seth Godin has written a book called This is Marketing, I think is the title of the book. And he's really talking about narrow, really being clear on who you serve and not trying to be all things to all people. And that is definitely something that is in line. So go ahead and make a note of what your lane is next. And if that is something that is unclear to you, pop on over to the 30-day action list and maybe write that down, because that's something that you're going to want to get sorted out really, really quickly. Now, the next section is what's my promise. And the promise is like your tagline. It's your unique selling proposition. It's your thing that when people come to your website, boom, they get it immediately. They understand how you're going to help them. And by writing this down and keeping this 90-day roadmap in front of you all the time, if you ever start to feel yourself veering on track, I want you to go right back to your promise statement and remind yourself that this is what I do. The promise is what gives us a lot of clarity, and that gives us confidence to stand tall in our fees. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, the next big chunk on our 90-day roadmap is really, it's called What Are My Marketing Initiatives? And oh boy, do we have a long list here for you. I don't want you to become overwhelmed thinking that you have to do everything on this list, but what you might do when you're kind of running through this list is you might check off the things that you're doing now. Check off the ones that you want to add or improve. And I'd like you to see you only check off or really take action on one or two at a time, because this can get quite overwhelming. Let me just run you the list and see if anybody has any questions at the end of this list, because it's pretty long. We've got a week. Okay, so think about it in terms of you have a well-oiled marketing machine running. And if you're out speaking on a regular basis, this machine is running without you. So that's kind of where we want to get to. Some of you are getting closer to that. Some of you are setting it up as we speak. Okay, so initiative number 1 is your weekly blog post. Now, if you're not blogging on a weekly basis, that's okay. What we look for is consistency. If it's every 2 weeks, great. Do it every 2 weeks and do it at the same time so that people come to expect it. I will say that I noticed a major shift when I finally committed to going weekly on my blog posts. So just know that that's something to consider. Now, the second one on the list is the weekly broadcast to the list, like a newsletter, an email. And we actually double dip and do the blog and the podcast to the same content. And so you can consider doing that if you don't think that your newsletter list is already signed up for your blog. Think about doing a podcast. Again, it doesn't have to be weekly, but the sooner you commit to a time frame and on a regular basis, I think the better it will go. That was for me about 7 years of just doing it and doing it and doing it. And finally, once I committed, I think it was only about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that I decided to do it weekly, and everything started to change. Another idea for you is to have an initiative. Jen, this is for you when your book gets launched, is to put your book in the hands of decision makers. So, Jen, your market is first responders. So you may decide that you're going to go out to all of the first responder type associations or organizations who you think you'd like to speak to, and that might be a part of your marketing campaign when maybe you get 100 extra copies and that's how you send them out. Social media engagement is the next chunk, and we've got quite a number under here. What I would suggest you do is to really identify a couple that you want to go all in on and really hunker down on those, because trying to be all things to all people, even on social media, can become exhausting. So we've got Facebook and Facebook stories, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Instagram stories, Instagram TV, flash briefings, which if you don't know about that, I'll tell you about that. YouTube video, like you could have your own YouTube channel, and customized chat bots. There are so many opportunities that lie in those things that I just listed to you. So really be thinking about which ones you'd like to go deep on. If you are heavy in the business side, then you might say, okay, I'm going to go all in on LinkedIn. And for my one on the other side, maybe I'm going to really start to populate my YouTube channel. I don't know. It's going to be up to you to decide. I had a client who's new on the scene and he wanted to do 5 of them, and we just felt like he couldn't do all 5 justice. So Instagram TV is something that's coming on hot. People think it's going to contend with YouTube, but I'm waiting to see on that. And flash briefings is something that is new. So some food for thought. So let me just check in with everybody. Now, hang on. I've got a few more to give you, and then I'm going to check in and see what the questions might be. Contests and giveaways. We actually just ran the Best Speaker Website contest not too long ago. We've done a Best Video contest before, and we've done lots of giveaways. Facebook advertising. I think that you need to pay to play nowadays, and so that's something you want to test with small amounts of money, see what works, and get better and better at it. Google AdWords, and there's LinkedIn advertising. You can really spend a lot of money on social media these days. OPPs, that's other people's podcasts. I think that's a great way to go if you're not ready to do your own yet. Same thing applies for guest blog posts. So if you're not really ready to start your own blog, maybe you can be writing articles for other people's. Also, articles for trade and business magazines. Webinars we typically use to launch programs and products. Live streaming on Facebook Live. My social media team is always saying, I think you should be out on doing some live on Facebook. And this, for me, doing a live kind of podcast is something that you can take a look at the things that you do and you can double dip. For instance, one of the people that I follow, their podcasts, they'll do a Facebook Live and they'll record it and then they'll put it over to the podcast. So that's a great way to serve their market. Now, let me give you these last 4 because they're really important. Lead magnets on your website. You really want to be pulling people in, collecting names and email addresses and pulling them into your website and kind of keeping them there until they buy from you. And circling back, this is one of the things that all of you can be doing. Circling back to friendly leads, past clients, colleagues, neighbors, and friends. That could be something that you come, once a quarter, take a look at and see, are there things that I could be doing that I'm not doing yet. So let's just open it up for any questions on this very, very long list of marketing initiatives. I know this was a really long list. I don't want you to be overwhelmed by it. I want you to just pick a couple of things that you're going to add to your repertoire. Let me just go to my list here. Rob had a comment back on promise statement, and he said, I noticed that the promise statement was actually phrased as a question on the majority of the websites that placed in your competition this year. Is this an emerging trend? I would say it's about 50-50. It was probably just a fluke on the website this year, Rob, but I would say you might be making a statement or you might be asking a question, but the question needs to be very clearly pointing towards what it is that you're offering and how you're going to help people. That's the goal of the promise, that they come onto your website and boom, they can see immediately how you are going to help them. Do we have any questions? Just give me a signal here if anybody. Go ahead, Jason. Let me unmute you here. Go ahead.
All right. So my question is around the weekly broadcast email list. And I've got a pretty good size email list, but I'm not sure it's really the target that I want. And I'm wondering what other people are doing related to who they're targeting and if they're getting opt-ins on their websites. Because it seems to me the targeting that I truly want to do is to those who are the decision makers for speaking opportunities, like meeting planners and likely the business executives who are making those bigger decisions.
Right.
But what I found is that a lot of things that I blog about and a lot of people have come to my website and they get my opt-in and that sort of thing are general managers and leaders that may not really, they're almost kind of secondary. Yeah, they might recommend me
right
at some point. So what are people doing? Are they trying to focus in on a significant like avatar that's going to be the decision maker, or are they pretty broad where it's okay to have, be focusing blog posts and things like that on anyone who kind of falls within that primary or secondary target?
That's a great question. And the avatar, I think, is a very good idea. So get crystal clear on who your perfect buyer is and develop a lead magnet for them. Something that will allow them to be thinking about maybe you're kind of raising it up a level and making it a little bit more of a leader type question or offering that you have for your lead magnet. You want to be dangling a really strong carrot. And that way, you might even have a question when you sign people up for that offering that says, I am a manager or I'm a decision maker or whatever. Like, it might be something that you can ask them that can help you ascertain. What are you giving away on your website right now, Jason?
I've got a few things, but the primary one is it's 50 ways to power persuasion. quick list. And so it's a one-pager, but I also have 2 ebooks. One of them is around presentation building, and the other one's around motivating, how to motivate and move people.
Okay. So what you might do is tweak something like that for leaders so that you can identify that, okay, well, at least I know that they downloaded this one that's specifically for leaders. It's really hard to chunk down your list. And so what you might do is actually survey them at some point and ask them what we're really wanting when we do the survey is kind of find out where their pain points are. But when you're asking those questions, you can start to segment them as well. And so which one do you most identify with? I am a leader and decision maker in my company. I'm a frontline employee. You can ask some questions. And then your tagging system will help direct how you do your outbound emails. Because all of the other people who are non-decision makers, they might end up buying a course or something you do in the future. Mm-hmm. So I would say keep bringing them into your world, but try to segment them as they come if you can. Okay. Not the easiest thing to do, but that's a really great question. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that. All right. Anybody else have a question about anything that we've covered so far? Is it getting clearer in terms of thinking about what you want in 2019? Have you mapped out a couple of marketing initiatives that you might undergo? Let me just see what John's saying. When posting stuff to social media and website, newsletter, and blog, do you share the same content? Oh, that's such a great question. Do you share the same content to all, or do you keep stuff off social media for those who subscribe to your newsletter? So, John, I was just talking to an expert about this when I recorded a podcast earlier this week. And what they like you to do is social specific type work. So for instance, you might do a video that is specifically for your LinkedIn followers. And then you might do a different video that is specifically for your tribe, the people who are already on your email list. You know, you might know them a little bit better and you might say a little bit different to them. So when we go out with video, we kind of have a real purpose for it and we don't cross all platforms with it, even though being kind of the lazy marketer that I can be sometimes, I am tempted to do that. And I do it sometimes, but I try not to do it all the time. So that's a great question. But I would kind of be social specific about how you do things. And like I said, we might double dip on something like, for instance, those wealthy speaker minutes that I was telling you about that go to Alexa. We might double dip and I will post those as a video as well as coming through your Alexa device. So I love repurposing and making the most of content, but we don't necessarily post everything everywhere. Talisa, did you have a question about anything we've covered so far? And I'm going to unmute you if you do. Hang on a second. There we go. Any questions about anything we've covered so far?
I think you addressed one of the questions I had, which is, how to not get overwhelmed, because I tend to get overwhelmed when I take on too much. So between that and having the promise statement on the website, can you be a little bit more descriptive about that?
So the promise statement, what do you mean about that? And I'll cover that one first.
I guess looking at it as how to allow people to know, because I feel like my website's about to launch. Okay. And I feel like it's very clear, but I realized that I did not put my promise statement on the website, so that's what I was just trying to get some clarity with.
Okay, well, we definitely want to see your promise statement front and center, at least on the homepage of your website, but ideally, it comes through on every single page, because if I hop on and see you somehow through a backdoor link, maybe I come in through the About Us page or the Contact Us page, it's just going to be your name up there in the corner and I won't know what it is that you do. So one of the things I've done to kind of combat that is build my promise right into my logo. And the logo kind of goes top left on the website. People say you read top left to bottom right. And so I'm actually in the throes of doing a new website right now, and you will see Jane Atkinson, speaker launcher, that's my brand, catapult your speaking business. You'll see that on every single page because it's built right into my logo. So think about whether or not that's doable for you, Talisa, because it's definitely something we want to see on every page. I want to get immediately how you are going to help me, okay? Cool. Thank you, guys. And in terms of not getting overwhelmed, I'm just going to throw you back on mute there so we keep a nice clear line. In terms of not getting overwhelmed, this is where the next section on your 90-day roadmap comes into play. We've got a list for 60-day goals, a list for 90-day goals, and an action list, which is your next 30 days. And what I'd like you to do as your next chunk of exercise is go back to your mega goals and star one or two of them. And what we'll want to do from that is take them over and place them in the appropriate places, one action step that is going to get you to your mega goal. So for instance, if I was serious about writing my 5th book, which is the supposed bestseller that it's going to be, ha ha ha, if I was serious about that, then I would say to myself, okay, well, what's the first step? Maybe I need to decide on what the book is about, what it's going to do, or the title or something like that. Then I would decide, all right, can I do it in the next 30, 60, or 90 days? And I would write it down in the appropriate place. And then what we want to make sure we're doing is constantly kind of moving things from one to the next so that your next 30 days, and this is the best way to not get overwhelmed, Talisa, is to really identify what are my next steps. You probably are taking off these gargantuan bites and you're thinking, I have to have it all done yesterday. That's why that marketing initiative list, I only want you to look at 2 things. So under your need to add or improve column, there should only be a couple of check marks there. And if you have 4 or 5, then I want you to put stars by 2 and just say, okay, I have those other 3s are going in the bank and I'm going to just work on 2 right now. And then once you've done that, okay, let's say that you decide that you want to add Facebook advertising to your list. You go over to your 30-day action list and then you put, what are my first steps? I need to learn all about Facebook advertising. I can just Google it and find tons and tons of information and experts on how to do it well. So let me get boned up on it first. So maybe that's my first action step, is to learn more about it. And then maybe another action step might be to set a budget. And maybe another action step might be maybe you hire someone to help you with your ads because it's hard to do it on your own. Okay, so we want to break things down into small bite-sized pieces. And from that 30-day list, they might even make it over onto your master calendar, because for me, if it's not on my master calendar, like my iCal on my phone, on my desktop, is not happening. So I have to actually transmit my 30-day action items into chunks of time in order to get them done. Or it may be just a chunk that says work on my 30-day action list. Okay? So think about breaking things down into smaller bites. Every time I learn something, so let's say I attend a webinar or I go to my coaching session, which happens once a quarter in Toronto. I'm hopping on the train on the way there. I'm thinking about my business. While I'm there, I'm taking tons of notes with ideas. This is probably one of the most helpful things that I learned, and I don't know where I got it from, but it's one of the most helpful things I do. So I'm writing ideas, and I probably come home with 2 full pages of ideas. Then I take each of those ideas and I put them into 30, 60, 90. And so it's only the 30 days I have to focus on right now, because some of them I'm not ready to think about. Does that help maybe break it down for you, Talisa, a little bit so you're not feeling quite so frazzled?
Yes, actually, it helps because again, I'm looking at the idea and I'm trying to get 200 done today, and that's impossible. And then I'm disgusted tomorrow because I didn't get any of them completed. So
Okay.
yeah, it does help tremendously.
So how are we going to set it up so that you are not going to break agreements with yourself, so that you're going to do small chunks of things that are going to work for you? So you're a part of our Wealthy Speakers Sprint, and a part of that is reaching out to people. Some people who are part of our group might be trying to make 50 connections a week, but you've got a full-time job, right? Is it full-time? Yeah. So maybe your goal is to make 5 connections a week. Take off bite-sized chunks and just get yourself some wins built up. One of the apps that Dan Sullivan, my coach, developed is called Win Streak, WINSTREAK, Win Streak. And by recognizing your wins every day, that is going to allow you to build momentum and push it forward. You would be surprised at when you sit down. Mine goes off on my phone at 4:00 every day. And you would be surprised that on days that you really don't think you got anything done, I can go, oh yeah, wait a second, I got that done. Oh yeah, there was that too. And then, there's all these little things that I'm doing that I don't feel like they add up, but then when I look at the big list at the end of each day, they really add up. So check out that app. I think you're really going to like it. All right. So Jason is talking about getting his CRM going, and we actually do have a CRM that we recommend, Jason, and it is called Karma CRM for Speakers. It's with a K, Karma CRM for Speakers. And if you go to speakerlauncher.com/karma, you'll get onto a 30-day trial. And I think Karma will sometimes expand that to 60 days trial if you come through us. Okay, so Jason, speakerlauncher.com/karma. If you pull that up, maybe pop it into the chat group so other people will have it as well. All right. Let me share with you a little bit. This is kind of circling back to something that Jason had talked about earlier. And this is our section called Relationships to Build. There's two different chunks. The first side is target markets. And I would like you to choose either 1, 2, or 3 industries to go specifically after. And one of the ways you can identify what industries you might want to go after is think about where the pain is. Where do people need you? So Jason, you were talking about presentation skills. Maybe you go to the industry where you think they have to give a lot of presentations, but maybe they're not very well versed in doing it. So that might be something. Sometimes you will, for the first year of your career, you'll go out and speak to anyone who will listen, and then you start to identify pockets. I have had the funniest clients who have, different kind of leadership talks or presentation skills or whatever, and they find this market with accountants. Like, you never really know who your people are going to be, and I think that's something that's very interesting. So the goal is, with your target markets, that we pick 1, 2, or 3 target markets. Jen, for instance, has gone deep into first responders, and she's just kind of been able to scrape away all the noise that goes on around her and just focus her outbound efforts on that. Now, every once in a while, she'll get the call for somebody else coming inbound that's not a first responding group, but that's okay. I think that the idea is that your outbound efforts are very focused, and you might just go deep in one target market. Let me give you an example on that. Greg Schenkel, who we've had on the podcast a couple of times, he chose his lane. He picked a lane, and the lane was leadership. And then he went down even further, and it was frontline leadership. And then he went down, and it was frontline leadership for manufacturing. So his URL is now frontlineleadership.com. He targets manufacturing only. And what is happening, he's just signed like probably his $5 million contract because they think he's the only game in town doing this work. And I think it's amazing. He's got, actually, there's people on the line here who are subcontracting for Greg. You know, people, even though he is one of several people who does this frontline leadership, people think that he's the only game in town. And I think when you go more and more narrow, that can be incredibly helpful. So be thinking about who your target market is. Think about where the pain is in order to get to those. Now, on the other side of this relationships to build box, we've got companies and associations to target. These might be just, you know, you might be driving around town. I'm in the headquarters for 3M Canada. And so 3M might be on my list if I was going to go out and do corporate speaking. We've actually got a ton of manufacturing in and around this town. So I would probably think manufacturing might go on my list as well. We also have a lot of insurance in my backyard. And if speaking close to home is important to you, then you might want to be looking at what all is right in your backyard. And that will allow you to have companies and associations to target. Now, I've told the story before of Kendra Hall and Ryan Estes. Kendra started out building her business by sending out 600 emails. And a lot of those emails went out to American Marketing Association kind of chapters, and then state level, and then kind of national level. And because of all the AMA work that she did in the early days, that led her into a lot of corporate Fortune 100 work. So a lot of this is why we often start with associations. We think, okay, well, where are the people that we ultimately want to hang out? Where do they belong? And then we kind of go from there. Now, Ryan, he did it a little bit differently. He was more of a smiling and dialing kind of guy, but he really built his business on the back of SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Managers. And because while he was still with his day job, he had done a lot of SHRM state conferences. He was already starting to build momentum, which was terrific, because in those SHRM conferences, every time, if there were 500 people in the room, that was 500 companies that were represented. And that's a great way to be getting into these companies. So think about what relationships you might be wanting to build. Now, I'm going to just see if there's anybody who would like to ask a question from this. And Jen was just saying if any questions don't get answered, we'll make sure that they go on the Facebook group, and we'll make sure that we get those covered. Ron, anything on target market, 60, 90-day planning for you?
Think of the target market piece. The piece I've been challenged with the most, I think, is understanding that the folks I want to get to are leaders that lead others and empower others.
Right.
So when you go to associations, that can go across a lot of industries, because I'm really looking at an organization that has that kind of size and complexity to it.
Right.
And that bridges all industries. So that's been my challenge, I think, is how do I target that from an association standpoint to get the foot in the door, when really I'm willing to go. It's more based on that size and complexity of the organization.
Yeah, and do you think that manufacturing is kind of your sweet spot, Ron? I was thinking about you when I was talking about Greg.
Yeah, I've certainly came out of that industry, so I understand that, and telecom, and the other one that you mentioned here was SHRM, because so much of what I do has to do with engagement and leadership development, that I'm wondering if maybe that's not an inroad into a lot of the places where I'm trying to go.
Okay, so what about this? What if you put your target markets to be HR, so SHRM, manufacturing, and telecom? And that at least gives you some focus going out.
Right.
And what you might find is that different things are coming in to you, and you'll still speak locally and try to gain some traction there. And, like we said, some people will recommend that you just go out and speak to anyone who will listen for that first year, just to try to identify who your perfect target markets are. Okay?
Great. Thanks.
Sound like a plan? Good. Thank you, Ron. Anybody else have a question around target markets or anything? Let's see. Let me see if John, I'm just going to go back to your list of questions, John, see if anything fits under this. What digital system do you use to keep track of your goals? So this page is not necessarily digital, but it does end up digital, John, when it comes over to the calendar. And in terms of keeping on track, I think the best thing is to be checking in at the beginning of each month on your goals. I also have the Wealthy Speaker Journal, Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal. And so one of the things, we have a 30-day roundup in the journal. We also have some 60 and 90-day planning in there as well. And but for those daily goals, I then will transfer them over to the calendar, because if they're not on the calendar, they're not real. I don't know if you, and for those of you who are doing the sprint right now, what's really important is that you mark off some time on your calendar, however many days a week that you're committing to do sprint activities. And you might just put sprint and then put it in a different color, and that means those 2 hours are then dedicated to sprint activities. And every time you start to feel like reneging on that agreement with yourself, I want you to remember why you're doing this, what the goal is, and that will help you stay accountable to that. All right. Now, I've just got a couple of sections to cover, and then we will just open up for Q&A. The last two are my team and new hires. And some of you might be thinking, okay, I'm way far away from hiring, but it could be that you have just small hires. For instance, Frank, who I was just talking to earlier today, found someone in the Philippines who for $7 an hour is going to do some list building activity for him and and do some research for him. You know, that heavy lifting that takes so much time, going into an organization's website, finding out when their next convention is, if it's an association, finding out what speakers they had the last year. All of that takes time. And so he found these people. And I know through Upwork and other places, you can find people who are overseas who will be thrilled with doing work like that. So really be aware of where you might be able to farm out and offload some of the heavy lifting duties so that you can free yourself up for the things that are really important. Maybe there are things on your daily to-do list that are not, say, $50 or $100 or $300 an hour tasks, but they're $20 an hour tasks. And if you can find somebody to fill those in for you for $20 an hour, that might just free you up incredibly well. We have Stacy, who is, I call her my personal assistant, but really she comes in and helps to run the home. And she's game to do any of the tasks that we put in front of her, because I told her what we needed was a wife. My husband and I need a wife. And so she's great at just coming in. So that's money that is so well spent. So be thinking about what you might be able to do just as a small step towards hiring team. So under this list of my team, we put our current people, and then we look at our new hires. And new hires are team that you might want. When we first started 6 years ago going to Strategic Coach in Toronto, my friend Justine and I were sitting there, and they were talking about, what if we could farm out everything? And so she has to travel from city to city to do sales calls to doctors. And so we talked about her having like a limo service in every city, or a driver in every city, so that she could be on her phone and making calls and doing business while she's in each city. And I just thought that was a really cool idea of, just what is something you can take off of your plate to free you up for what you do best. So be making a list of your current team and a list of your new hires, and that will allow you to start to see your 90-day action plan here come together. So let's just open it up. We'll take a couple more questions, and then we're going to pause the recording here. Anybody have any questions on 60, 30, 60, 90, marketing initiatives, target markets, team? Carol, I know we haven't talked to you yet. I was trying to check in to see if you were driving. I'm just going to unmute you and see if you are able to talk to us.
I totally am driving, so I apologize.
That's okay.
But my question, I guess, with the target market. So I'm really narrowing in on high potential mid-level management, like female leaders in that arena. Mm-hmm. And so the industries that I speak to the most right now are HR, admin, and I've done quite a lot of government work. So like associations, just got back from the financial management institution, which is not an industry in and of itself necessarily, but government, like frontline management, I guess. So those are my three areas.
Awesome.
I think that I'm going to, in terms of that. My question was that, so I have a keynote and I have a few different breakouts, but I'm putting together a new package that's called Her Brave Leader. It might be Her Brave, I don't know if I'm going to attach the name, but taking the 5 different workshops that I give and packaging it as a workshop series and or full program. But when I'm reaching out to people, I don't want to just sort of jump in with that. That's with people who've heard me speak before. So I don't know whether or not to just continue outreach to get in front of audiences, period, or whether or not I should do business development specifically for this program that I'm working on.
Well, I think you're kind of on the right track when it comes to what's the next step for people who already know, like, and trust you. Then you could kind of move them into this next step. Does that make sense? Like, this is kind of your plan already, and I think it might be a solid one. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't identify a particular target industry and say, okay, I'm just going to approach them with this idea. And maybe you talk to 10 people and then decide if they might need a stepping stone. But maybe you're going to get somebody on the line who's absolutely ready to go all in. So most of our ideas, the bottom line here is that most of our ideas, we test them. Yeah. Okay. And this is kind of coming back to industry, and this is for everybody. When you decide to go really deep into an industry, maybe it's bobjones.com/healthcare. And this is the healthcare page because Bob has gone all in, and he only shares that with people when that's appropriate. So you might have this page all built out for your website up your sleeve, and then you share it when it's appropriate. And like I said, maybe you go out and test it for a little bit and see if you gain any traction.
Okay, that makes sense.
It sounds like a wonderful program, though, Carol.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to mute you because you already have a broken arm. I don't want you to have any more accidents. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Jen, can we check in with you? I know you have like a million things to add here.
Oh, absolutely. Just the whole thing of keeping it really simple and keeping those goals short and set it out there and then, as Jane said, work it backwards and keep those baby steps going. Just know that they're really key. If you want to write a book, for instance, and it's a 50,000 word book, then you know that if you wrote 500 words a day, that would take you 100 days to write. If you want to speak so many times a year, figure out how many touch points you want to be doing each month and then break it down by day. So just keep it really simple. As far as Jean mentioned about keeping your goals, only having those one or two. I would say definitely, as a person who's achieved a lot and likes to achieve a lot, I usually have one or two main goals that I have a year, and that's pretty much it. The rest are all kind of my lesser priority goals that, I'd love to hit, but if I don't hit, it's not, do or die. But really, really prioritizing those goals and knowing where you want to spend that time in a very focused way is really helpful.
Awesome. And Jen really is literally the queen of goals. She says, I'm going to do an Ironman. Boom. She goes off and does an Ironman. She says, I'm going to become a firefighter. Boom. The next thing you know, Jen's a firefighter. I mean, every time I turn around, she is surprising me. The book, I didn't even know you were writing the book, Jen, until like a couple of weeks ago, and boom, she's just like right knee deep in it. So when Jen sets her goals, she goes really big, and she goes after them. And that is why she is your accountability partner here on the Wealthy Speaker Sprint. And that goes back to a question that John had about, do you use an accountability partner? We have the Wealthy Speaker Sprint as your accountability partner. If you see someone on Facebook and the group and you think, oh, we have a lot in common, we should connect, please connect with each other. We have people who are doing a lot of great work outside of our group classes. And so just know that that is an option. Okay. Let me just wrap up our podcast here, and I'm going to come back to you guys here shortly. Thank you so much for tuning into our holiday podcast, and thank you again for the Sprint members for joining us. If you'd like to go even deeper on this learning and really sit down for a weekend and map out your strategy, we have Accelerate Live 2019 happening in Fort Myers, Florida on February 22nd and 23rd. If you will just click on speakerlauncher.com, click on events, you will see Accelerate Live 2019. Thank you, podcast listeners. If you've come in on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, please give us a rating. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a review. That would be most appreciated. And happy holidays. I hope that all of your wishes come true, not just for this holiday season, but into 2019. And with that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speakers Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.